The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Today we have an email from Thomas, and Thomas is writing to us from Las Vegas, Nevada. And Thomas says, of course, the economy is on everyone's mind. The conflict in Iran is helping raise the prices on almost everything. I've been following the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and my questions are from concerns they have raised, and I'd like the panel's take on it. With Brent crude climbing above $100 per barrel, how vulnerable is the economy to a prolonged Middle East conflict? The IMF now projects global growth at just 3.1%. Are we headed toward a recession if the conflict widens? How should policymakers balance rising defense spending with the risk of inflation and weakened fiscal stability? Oh, those are excellent questions, Thomas. Yeah, I don't know. The increasing of defense spending over and above what has already been put in there. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Well, you got to remember, he's not only, I don't think he's only talking about the United States. He's talking about the world as
everywhere.
A whole. Now that the United States has basically shown itself to be a basically unreliable partner.
Yep.
And as we were talking in the last podcast, where Japan is saying, listen, we're going to have to abandon our pacifist policies of post-World War II. It's going to have a huge impact when those policymakers, because they've got to balance it. Before, they could, concentrate on their economy because they knew that their security was assured by the United States. Now they have to basically take that cost on themselves. While we still continue to spend gazillion dollars on defense that nobody, if we're not doing all the things we were doing before, who knows why we still need to do it. But as Scott brought out in the last podcast, we might be rebuilding the infrastructure of, the Middle East. I mean, that's not going to be cheap, people. And you're going to be paying for it. And here's the thing that people just don't get. There's no benefit to us to do that as far as direct benefit to the people of the United States. And that comes down to the fact that we're a global economy, but we're an economy that we're seeing it today is based totally on oil. Oil controls it all. Again, we've said this numerous times. If we need to get people here in the United States, those industrialists, those scientists, those people that look ahead and say, you know what? Oil is our biggest problem right now. Maybe we ought to move away from it, and maybe we ought to start looking at new technologies that are better for the environment and are not reliant on crude oil as much as it is now.
Well, then people shouldn't have elected Trump because he was the one who said, oh, drill, baby, drill, and stopped all the programs that Biden had going that Harris would have continued. So, it's not has nothing to do with the three of us. We didn't vote for it. And Trump was very clear about what he was going to do. Yeah, we need to move away from gasoline, oil and gas. Absolutely.
It's an opportunity. I mean, it truly is an opportunity. And it's something that the United States was always noted for. We saw the opportunity in everything. But if nothing else, this conflict has shown us, and it's shown us a lot of things. It has shown us, in my mind, most starkly, how really reliant the world is on oil and how much that one commodity, more than any other commodity that exists out there, really can impact the worldwide global economy in such a detrimental way. Scott's thinking.
Well, I mean, so who's it? Thomas? from
Yeah.
Las Vegas, follows the IMF. Good man. I myself am not smart enough to follow the IMF, but but I do know that the IMF just held a meeting in Washington, D.C. Last Thursday, I think it was, and that they're projecting that really horrible things are happening, have been happening for a long time, and even though there have been, we've taken a step back in our amount of deficit spending, that it's actually going up again now, thanks to guess who in office. We had been close to 8% of GDP. Now we've fallen below 7, but the forecast is that it's going up around 7.5% and staying there. The weirdest part is that our US debt is on track to exceed 125% of GDP this year, and by 2031 could reach 142% of GDP. That means that just sort of mitigating that would cost about 4 percentage points of GDP. Thomas mentions something, and it's the reason I went and started looking for this, that they're projecting a 3% growth. I can't imagine that that's accurate. You're going to have to, somebody's going to have to look that up while I'm talking, because what it seems to me is going on right now is that we're all operating on negative. We're all in recession. Like right now we're in a recession, and we just don't see it yet. But there's no growth. I mean, we know that the Fed just came out with the fact that job growth has been a net negative. Getting rid of all the immigrants has been horrible for our economic well-being, and I don't think anybody has any, like, white people have taken over those jobs. So I don't think that that's happened. Employers are still looking for employees to fill gaps that they have, and there's nobody there to fill them. And that our national debt at $39 trillion is just unsustainable, and we continue to bring in less revenue. I mean, getting rid of all the people in the IRS that Doge got rid of, and Trump didn't like, because they go after him so much, and all wealthy people don't like the IRS. Well, all middle class people should really love the IRS, because they go after these guys that nobody else can go after and get the money, and it's trillions of dollars that they hide from the Internal Revenue Service. So we have more spending under Trump and less revenue collection. That's a disaster. Again, I mentioned before, in another podcast, that we were talking about the 32% approval rating for Trump, and I think I know every single one of those 32%, because the people I talk to, a fair amount, have gone from being fiscal conservatives to, whatever Trump says is fine. And, I can't fathom the change in so many people that I used to talk about, who were free traders and who are now complete protectionists embracing tariffs, or were completely, low spending, low government. And now we have a government that's in our face all the time, that's putting cameras all over the place, and constantly monitoring our movements, wants to be involved in day-to-day decisions of our lives. The most intrusive government that we've ever had before is the government that we have right now. None of these things are conservative values, and they're all being excused by this 32% of people who still approve of Donald Trump.
Yeah. All right. So I'm on the IMF site right now, and Thomas, you're correct. However, it has been revised. You had 3.1% growth. They're now predicting 3.2% for 2026, or 3.3, excuse me, 3.3% for 2026, but that'll drop down to 3.2 in 2027. But here's, when we look at that, we have to remember they're talking about all the markets. So if we section that out, according to the IMF, worldwide, from the old data, 3.1% worldwide. Emerging markets, 3.9% growth.
Okay.
Advanced economies, such as the United States, only 1.8%. So that's how it kind of balances it out. They're saying that those emerging markets are going to basically almost be 4%, where the advanced economies, such as ours, will be less than 2%. And in 2026, they are saying the United States will probably grow 2.3%. So his numbers are correct. They did revise that this past week when they met to 3.3%. But yeah, I mean, and there's some economies that are going to lose. Kuwait minus 0.9%. They're going to lose. Iran, another country that they're talking about, will lose some of that. Jamaica down 1.2. Iran down 6.1. So the IMF looks at this as a worldwide kind of thing. And let's remember too, there is talk of eliminating the IMF, and we were talking about it before, creating a new body opposed to the IMF, and guess who isn't invited? The United States. So I guess we have to wait and see. But India, they're predicting this year 6.5% increase. Iran minus 6.1, Iraq minus 6.8. So
Well,
again,
what about Europe?
What about Europe? All right, let me take a quick look here for Europe. United Kingdom 0.8%, Switzerland 0.13%,
Right,
Spain 2.1%.
My understanding of what a recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative, what they call negative growth of negative, right? And these are still positive numbers. They're not, except for the couple that you mentioned, Iran
and Iraq and Kuwait. Yeah.
Are negative, but the rest of us are still in the positive. It's hard to believe, but okay, I'll buy it.
Yeah, it is interesting. The Russian Federation 1.1% increase, and I think you're right, Scott. It is if two quarters are that's considered a recession. This is across the year data. So you could have 2 quarters that are below and 2 quarters that are above. So we're in the second quarter, I believe.
Still propped up by consumers, I'm guessing, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what. Exactly.
And boy, are they paying attention to that.
Oh yeah. I mean, but again, the Middle East. We're talking to Middle East too. Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, minus 8.6%. These are oil-rich countries that are basically in the negative. I mean, Puerto Rico down 0.1%. Well, yeah, but what do they rely on mostly? Tourism. And if you can't travel, okay, well, So, yeah, Thomas, and again, I agree with Scott. Thank goodness somebody's paying attention to what the IMF is doing, because they're fairly reliable when we look at what they predict out. So yeah, it's interesting to see. I'm looking at the G7, just the G7 increase of 1.6%. Just the G7.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's something to really kind of keep emerging and developing Europe. 2% increase. I think you bring up a great point.
So the question is, how should policymakers balance rising defense spending with the risk of inflation and weakened fiscal stability? And Thomas, let me tell you something. If we spend more money on defense, I'm going to lose my shit. I mean, if I thought that, I thought that like, Trump's view of NATO is that it's a big bucket and everybody has to throw money in it, and then and they don't, so we have to throw more money into it. And I know that that's not the case. That the case is that it's simply you're supposed to provide a certain percentage, I think it was 3% or 2% of your GDP on defense, and that they hadn't been doing that. But it really didn't matter because we were spending like 3 to 4%, I think it was 3% of our GDP, which is huge, of course, on defense. And that was enough defense for everybody. Well, now because of the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, other countries have begun spending more money on defense. But rather than say, well, if they're spending more, we can spend less, we went ahead and said, okay, you guys are spending up to 3%. We're gonna now spend 5% of our GDP on defense. And that concept just blows my mind because I don't understand why we would do such a thing. And as I've said a million times before, that's why we can't have nice things here, and including railways that that you don't lose a tooth on going from New York to Baltimore. I just like, once again, you ride Amtrak and you take your life in your hands, and you ride a train in Germany and you have to look out the window to see if you're even moving because it doesn't feel like you are. How can there be these disparities in our infrastructure and our ability to build? Why do we have to walk around? I was in New York City this weekend, ate at Delmonico's, very nice.
Oh, wow.
And expensive. Luckily, my brother picked up the tab. But the but you walk around the streets of New York, and all you see is scaffolding everywhere because it takes so long to build anything, even to like reface the side of a building seems to be like a forever thing. And so, I had to drive down Second Avenue to get to my brother's apartment, and Second Avenue is nothing but scaffolds all the way down from like 125th Street into the 80s. It's nothing but scaffolding everywhere you look because we can't finish any projects because there's no money to do it, or the red tape in New York City is too much. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that we can live better lives than we live now without spending so much money on defense, and that we're, again, for the millionth time, preparing for the last war instead of the way wars are being fought now. When are we going to learn to look at what Ukraine is doing to the Russian army, which is like our own, this big juggernaut of an army, and it's being defeated by Ukraine using drones you can buy at, there's still a Radio Shack, you can buy a Radio Shack or Brookstone or whatever's still out there anymore selling these kinds of things.
Amazon, you get it off of Amazon.
All right, go to Amazon. If you have to sell out, go to Amazon.
Yeah, really.
Goodness. I mean, it's just like, when are we going to learn that people matter too? Education matters, healthcare matters, not just defense, and not just a defense that can't defend us. How about that?
Yeah.
There's like 7 companies that are making a fortune on taxpayer dollars when, we can provide our citizenry with better things.
Yeah.
One of my students just wrote a paper about inequities in pay between men and women. And I said, I think we need to look at this a little bit differently. One of the reasons that men make more money than women is because women traditionally have gone out on maternity leave and their return is never assured. And companies didn't want to pay a woman the same amount as they wanted to pay a man who would stay on after he had children. And I thought to myself, when I was reading her paper and she's talking about those disparities, didn't really mention any of that. And I just thought to myself, when I was in Germany working, our webmaster's wife had a baby and he went on paternity leave.
Right.
And I think he went for 6 months.
Yep. And
she was out for 2 years. And that baby is going to grow up healthy and strong and having both parents around, and it's the best time of their lives. And they're going to get to spend it with their small children instead of working and putting the baby in daycare and stuff like that. What are we doing to ourselves? Why do we do this to Americans? I know wealthy people don't have to deal with these things, but why is the American middle class allowing this to happen? Where the best times of our lives is the worst times of our lives because we're trying to figure out how to make ends meet on one income when we used to have 2. And our children are being shuttled off to a daycare facility somewhere rather than being home with mom and dad?
Yep.
These are questions that I have, Thomas. These are questions that,
Yep.
and I'm sure the IMF would offer guidance on this and say, you guys are doing it all wrong because you're spending too much goddamn money on defense. And it's not even a good defense. You've already run out of weapons in Iran. And you're constantly compromising other things that you need to get done for the people of America by giving this money to these 7 military industrial complex countries. Yes, Brooke. Sorry.
No. Please, you say whatever.
Scott was losing his shit.
No,
I was about to jump up and crash through the ceiling here.
Yeah, please do. It's no, that's perfectly fine. I just wanted to point out that even in Russia, the maternity leave is 3 years. And I mean, the women, I don't believe it's paid leave, unfortunately. And the parents are able to divide the leave up however they wish. And usually the husband gives it all to his wife, although, I mean, those were only the experiences of the students I had who were having babies or who had babies and were home with their children. And but the woman's job is held for her. So when she comes back, she has her job. She doesn't lose her job. Many women don't want to go back to work, but I mean, that's up to them. But it's 3 years, which is very nice. And if the husband wants 1 year or they want to split it, I mean, however they want to do it, that is up to them. And again, the husband's job would be held for him. And someone temporary is hired in the meantime.
Yeah.
Yep. And we just don't do that here.
No,
obviously.
We don't. And to Scott's point about, going down to New York City and seeing all the scaffolding, and probably, Thomas, you've never been there, but I remember Scranton, Pennsylvania, great place. When I was growing up, when I was in grade school, they were working on the Interstate 81 through Scranton. They finished it 40 years later. That's how long it took them. Oh, and by the way, the last time I went up in 2019, when my mom passed, it was back under construction again. So it lasted for, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years, and they're back at it again. So if you go to Scranton, you're going to go around it. And I love Scranton. I really do. Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area, love it. But by damned, it takes them forever to do a project up there. Yeah, bro.
Yeah, that reminds me. I was when I lived in Rochester, I would go down to Washington, to DC, to so my son could visit one of his friends, and there was a future Route 99 the way that I went, which was close to Scranton. It was like through Lewisburg and this and that and the other. And then for a while, I lived down in Montour County, and then after my late partner passed away, I had to do stuff with his brother's house. His late brother, left him the belongings to the house, and so my son and I were driving up and down, and it still said future Route 99. And nothing had changed, and except the amount of time that had gone by, which was considerable, because my son had still been in secondary school. And, here he was approaching 40, and future Route 99 still prominently displayed, and nothing at all had changed. So I don't know if they'll ever get to a future Route 99. But
that's everywhere, Brooke. I'm sure that's everywhere. Funny. Yeah. I mean, people will ask me. I live in the northwest portion of South Carolina, up really toward Asheville, North Carolina. For me to get to Myrtle Beach takes 4.5 hours, because once you get to Florence, you can't get there from here. You're on every backwood road that there is, and it's always said Future 73. Now, we've been here for almost 30 years. Future 73 has been there for the last 30 years, and I haven't seen them do a thing. So when somebody asks me, they say, well, gee, some friends of mine said, come on, we're going to do a golf outing down in Myrtle Beach. I said, okay, fine. They said, well, they were coming from Maryland. They could get there faster than I could, and I'm in the state. And I was like, are you kidding me? Because you just can't get there. So, and like Scott says, we spent so much money on defense, and it's, even though we say, well, gee, this is the greatest technology, blah, 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 but it's old mentality warfare, conducting a warfare that we're spending the money on. And I think that, that's another thing that this conflict has shown us in Iran, how effective drones are, how effective the F-35s and the F-15s and all that stuff. Yeah, they're great, absolutely great. But hey, they can be brought down by a drone.
I saw a program that deconstructed and analyzed the Trump class, supposedly upcoming Trump class battleship. Yeah, and I was wrong. They don't want to run on coal. They want to run it on oil, apparently, not nuclear power. And I mean, this thing is so weapons heavy that it's just jammed all full of stuff, including a rail gun that is still being tested. And the problem with a rail gun is that it's so hot that it melts the rails that it's on. So how you're going to put that on a ship is very unclear. And some of the weapons that they want to use, lasers and all kinds of stuff, you have to be so close to the target that you would be putting yourself and the ship at risk of being hit. I mean, the whole thing is purposeless, and it's ridiculous. And you'd be better off, again, with drones, with subs, with aircraft carriers, with today's technologies. But
even aircraft carriers are becoming.
Yeah. They had to back away.
That's right.
Yep.
I mean, maybe if you had an aircraft carrier that all it was filled with drones, a drone carrier. I mean, I'm still wondering why we had to go to war with Iran or anybody else with all those Jewish space lasers. Why? I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Where are the space lasers? Come on. They shouldn't have needed our help. They just had to, be mazel tough.
They're only good for starting forest fires in California.
All right. I missed that part. Yeah, those space lasers. Thomas, policymakers really do have to balance this, but it's going to take some forward thinking. It's going to take some thinking that is beyond post-World War II thinking of the mid to late 20th century. And once we get into that mode, once we get into the mode of saying, hey, what worked back in World War II, what worked maybe in the 80s, it's now obsolete stuff. It's cool, it's shiny, it's all sorts of technology. Yeah, that's great, but it's an expense that we can't afford. We simply cannot afford. And there's so many things that we could really have here in the United States. We could have a great life here. We really could. We could have a fabulous life here if we would stop spending so much damn money on the military from the post-World War II mentality. If we spent it on simple defense, where it was we're just defending our homeland, I think you could reduce that budget by 2/3, maybe more. And because we're a big country, we've got 2 oceans. Yep, okay. But if we just worked on defense, and right now, believe it or not, that may be one thing that the Trump administration has afforded us the opportunity toward, because other nations are basically saying, screw the United States. We have to go it alone. And it's going to be a tax on their economies. But it's probably high past the time that's what we started seeing here in worldwide, a new attitude to how defense is and how geopolitics is conducted, not with the sword, but maybe with the soft power, which I think is hugely important. And with just, let's defend our borders. That's fine. And maybe stay out of everybody else's business for a while. And then Scott can have a nice train ride from Connecticut to Washington, D.C. without his fillings getting knocked out.
Which I can't afford to replace because
Yeah.
we don't have enough healthcare benefits. The I'd say one more thing to our Republican friends out there. And I don't know if we have any Republican friends out there, but if we do, there's a tremendous
All
lesson
five of
learned.
you.
There's a tremendous lesson learned last night when Virginia's voters decided that they did want to gerrymander Virginia in response to the GOP effort to gerrymander Texas and I think Missouri, might have been some other states as well. I think Ohio was trying it. The legislature in North Carolina had gerrymandered. That has backfired now. Okay, because voters in Democratic run states have decided to fight back, you're not going to achieve what Trump wanted to achieve. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to realize that President Trump is an idiot. And it's time for you to move on from him and stop with this 32% approval rating. It's obscene that this guy should have 32% approval rating. Okay. This guy doesn't deserve a 5% approval rating. Everything he touches turns to shit. He's the shit Midas. And somehow or another, you guys are going to have to learn this lesson.
Well, Thomas, I think we covered most of that. And thank you for pointing us to the IMF. Because we don't look at that very often, but it's important. And that's one of the things I have to admit when I read the emails that we get from some of our listeners. You guys are really educated. I mean, you educate yourselves. And I think that's a fabulous thing. You're checking your facts. And like Scott said, when I read your email, Thomas, and it said 3.1% growth, my first thought was, no, can't be that. Can't be. And the fact is according to the IMF, you are spot on, except for what happened last week. So they've revised it a little bit. So congratulations to you and all our listeners that really are paying attention. And now we just got to get our Republican friends, all five of them, to start doing the same thing. And then maybe we can make some progress here. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe, I doubt we'll make ever any inroads. I was also listening to someone, I forget who it was now, where some poor person who was so deluded, who was saying that he couldn't be a Catholic anymore and that the Pope was woke.
Oh, that's Hannity. That was a good day for Catholicism.
Yes, it was Hannity.
Good day for Catholicism.
Oh, that was awful. It was just awful. It and some guy, some person was who didn't really sound like he was all there, was saying, oh, the I can't be a listener of Hannity's, I guess, was saying, oh, I can. The Pope is, and using all kinds of 4-letter words, and the Pope is for, the Islamics. I mean, he really did not speak English well, and I thought, this poor man, he really needs not the Pope, but the listener. He obviously is just not terribly well educated, but he was so angry at the Pope and so disillusioned, and clearly just having his mind filled with all kinds of trash. And I just, do you believe that, by the way, that Tucker Carlson's saying, well, I led people astray and I shouldn't have done that, but it was, I'm genuinely sorry. Do you believe that is a genuine apology?
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have been.
If it is, I don't accept it.
I don't accept it either. I don't, my only hope is that the guy who plays him on Saturday Night Live gets a nice juicy bit this week, because that guy is great at Tucker Carlson, whatever his name is. He's really good.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah. Well, Hannity is, I think, a lost cause, and he's horrible.
Yeah, obviously. He's part of this cult, and that's how you know somebody's part of a cult.
Yep.
Is if they give up their lifelong religion for the cult leader.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know how many
good news for us Catholics.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people are in that actual cult. I hope that there are not many.
It's fun. Who somebody's got to tell me who this was that said. I think it was Vance who said that the Pope needs to watch himself when he talks about religion.
Theology,
And
yeah, that's Vance.
Vance, and apparently the current Pope Leo, the Chicago Pope, wrote his dissertation on St. Augustine,
Yes.
from whom we get just war theory.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very likely that the Pope understands a lot more about war making than J.D. Vance does. And that should shock nobody.
All right, guys.
All right.
Yes, so thank you again to all our listeners. I second what Mark said, and we will see you again.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!